Hello everyone and welcome to this special video edition of the REC podcast, Talking Recruitment. I'm delighted to join you by video today. Lots going on at the REC this August. Maybe you've already dipped in on our legal work on the Supreme Court judgment around Harper Trust versus Brazel. Really important holiday pay changes there that you need to be across. There's a great webinar that we ran recently that'll be available on the website too. Also, of course, looking forward to a new Prime Minister at the beginning of September and potentially an emergency budget. Already some whisperings about taxation for contractors there, so we're working hard at that. But the big thing that's dominating the scene right now is going from what is a super tight labour market, really sky high demand, into a much more uncertain period in the autumn and into next year, which is being driven by high inflation, big changes in our economy and therefore in our jobs market. Maybe a little less concerning than in previous times because the labour market is just so tight. But certainly a time for recruitment business owners and leaders to be thinking about how we use the good year we've had so far to prepare for what is to come. And who better to do that with than our good friend Greg Savage, who's joining me on the pod today. Greg, welcome to our experimental video podcast.
Thank you, Neil. It's wonderful to see you, and it's great to be here at the REC offices with my old friends. I shouldn't say old, but Grishma and others. Seeing everybody again. First time in 3 years, Neil. Can you believe it?
I can, yeah. We did a tour in Glasgow and Manchester and London back in 19, and it seems like yesterday, but also an eon ago. And of course, the reason you're here is that we're doing an in-person session on August the 31st, which is going to be fantastic, looking into some of the things that we're digging into today. And if people want to come and join Greg and me on the 31st, you can book onto that event at rec.uk.com/events. It's one of the featured events on the page. But Greg, why don't we start with a little exploration of, where do we think we are right now? High demand, shortages in lots of industries, and as recruiters we're more in demand than ever, but of course the job itself, I was talking to an HR director in preparation for our conference back in June, and he said the one thing I don't want recruiters to tell me is, oh, the market's tight, it's also difficult. I want them to solve my problems. So how are you seeing recruitment in this market? Because I think in Australia you're also seeing a similar trend.
Very similar. It's actually, I think, Neil, and I wonder if you agree, a very complex, contradictory cocktail of different things happening at the same time. We've got high inflation. We've got high staff shortages, and there's talk of recession all the time, but recruiters can't find staff. So we have to be very careful not to throw the baby out with the bathwater. So there is an opportunity still to do very well. I'm talking about agency recruiters now, and we've got to keep doing certain things to make that happen. But it's also a time to be nimble and plan for a different environment. I heard the phrase a grey swan, which apparently is an event is coming, you just don't know when.
Yeah.
That's a grey swan, apparently. And I liked it because we are going to have a downturn, Neil. I think we know that. But if I knew when, I'd probably be shorting the stock market instead of chatting to you. We don't know when, and we don't know how severe, because it's quite possible that a modest downturn will actually help the supply and demand of labour. I will say that I think there are some people, and that as soon as I start talking about the economy rather than recruitment, I get out of my depth. But I think there are some people who feel that we are insulated against a recession because of the talent shortage. And I think that would be an error.
Yeah.
It can change very quickly. And when we've got high inflation, etc. But I mean, I'll give you one example of something I've seen happening. And I was with a client in the UK, in London this morning, and they told me the same thing. Candidates, we'll all agree, have been in high demand. As a result, candidates' confidence has been very high. Candidates have taken the view, well, if that job's not perfect, I won't take it. And if that job doesn't work out, I'll jump and get another one. I'm generalizing, but candidates have had high confidence, and so they should. But we've seen in Australia, and I'm told in the UK it's happening too, that candidates are pulling out, Neil, of the process mid-process. So they're in second interview, it's all going well, and suddenly they're saying, you know what? My mortgage has gone up. Inflation's high. Every time I switch on the news, someone's talking about a recession, I think I might stay where I am. So the interesting thing is, the first sign to my mind that something is definitely in the winds is when candidates start to lose confidence. Because if those candidates are losing confidence with a job hunt, you can also assume they're going to be pulling in their horns on spending, which means it's going to affect companies' revenues, which means that could be the beginning. That's when I get out of my depth, because I'm not an economist. But I would say we've got to be very careful about assuming that recruitment is totally insulated. It certainly is protected a little by the labor shortage. But if we went into a 2008, 2009 scenario, there will be nowhere to hide for recruitment companies unless you're prepared, Neil.
That is really interesting, Greg, because anecdotally, I have heard exactly the same thing. I wasn't, so I went to Denmark for a couple of weeks this summer, came back about 10 days ago. And before I went away at the end of July, wasn't hearing any of this about where candidates are. It was still all about candidates in demand, wages rising, big expectations. Since I've come back, I 3 or 4 major company chief executives have said to me, we don't have a problem with the clients. Actually, clients are still, the market's still improving. It's not improving the way it was in March, April, May, but yeah, that was always completely unsustainable. But now we're starting to see candidates change their thinking. And I think you're right. It's a confidence point, and it puts a real premium on kind of how you're running your business, how you're dealing with candidates, how you're putting your hands around them and helping them navigate the process, doesn't it? Because I think you talked a little bit just then about the relationships you have and the opportunities that still exist for those businesses who prepare in the right way. And I'd like to talk to you in a minute about clients and client relationships going into a period like this. But just for candidates, what does that mean? What does that picture that you've just painted mean for companies who are needing to think about candidate retention through processes, especially as, of course, processes might lengthen slightly through the autumn as clients also begin to think, let's just be absolutely sure before we make a decision?
Yeah. I'm fascinated to hear your anecdotes about going away and coming back and finding that some of your contacts or senior people were talking about it. I'm on the board of 16 recruitment companies, which means I spend my time inside. It's a very privileged position because I get to hear so much and learn so much. And I heard that story about candidates pulling out of the process from one client. And I spoke to all my other clients in board meetings over the following month, and they were saying, no, that's not happening, especially my IT clients. I'm on the board of 3 different IT companies. And they were saying, no, that's not going to happen. Just before I came away in the last round of meetings I went on, they were all, pretty much all, reporting that and they were shocked that had happened. And so to answer your question, I think we're going to talk about clients in a moment, but I think it means that recruiters have got to double down on engagement and communication and understanding candidates' motivation and partnering with them in the job search, which I think has not happened as much as it should have, because recruiters found themselves in a position, if they could find a candidate and get that person in front of 3 clients, the chances of making a placement were kind of good.
Yeah.
And so it was speed. It was a bit more than that. I shouldn't be so harsh, but it was definitely speed. It was covering the market. If candidates made a decision to move, I've just got to have enough balls in the air. I'm mixing my metaphors, I'm quite sure, for one of them to fall for me. Yeah. But now I think you've got to get much closer to the candidate and work with them on their true motivations to change jobs, because candidates are going to the process sincerely, but it only takes a call from dad to say, I think there's a recession coming, or your mortgage. In Australia, they said that in Sydney, the average mortgage for a monthly mortgage for a mortgage holder has gone up $1,200 per month since earlier this year. Wow. Now, the average salary in Australia is 65, 70,000. So when you're getting, and you're taxed 20,000 of that. So when you're getting up $1,200 a month, you are going to be very nervous about expenditure. You're going to be nervous about changing your job. So recruiters have got to get much closer to what people's real motivations are. If it was for a few extra dollars, maybe those are the people more likely to pull out of the process because the risk reward scenario is not big enough. But if it was for something much more fundamental, like work from home, cultural issues, or other things that people could say, they're not sustainable for me long term, I need to move, it's understanding that nuance of a person's job search. And a lot of recruiters, to be on, I've been a recruiter 40 years, so I'm completely in love with that industry, but I also sort of feel I've got the right to criticize it. A lot of recruiters don't get that deep. Recruitment's become less engaged, or more remote, I should say, because of COVID. But now it's more remote because it suits people to work the way they're working. And that is a mistake. And I'm not getting into the debate about work from home or not, because you can get engaged on a video, you can make the phone calls, you can ask the right questions, you can be more empathetic, you can dig deeper. That's what I mean by getting engaged. So that is a influencing skill that a lot of recruiters lack. And we need that at this stage. And we also need it when we come to clients. Does that make sense to you, Neil?
Absolutely does, and I think there's a lot in there. I talk a lot about recruitment as a digitally enabled people industry,
Yeah.
as in, you've got to have the tech giving you the productivity advantages that the tech bring, but actually your sale is in the value added conversations, and the value added conversations are with your candidates and with your clients. And if you look at this environment that we now face, the more risk there is running through the system, as in candidate decisions and indeed client decisions, you've got to get close to understanding that process. Because if I'm just working on a desk and I'm looking at my pipeline, what I don't want to be doing is putting things into my pipeline that won't come through.
That's right.
Because that will undermine me as a professional, and it means I won't be achieving the kind of numbers I'm looking to give head of desk, give the MD, and that flows right up through a recruitment firm, which is what's our realistic plan, and how do we get closer to candidates at a moment like this? I agree, it's absolutely not about in person versus remote. And the same goes for clients, doesn't it? Because
100%.
clients are, so one of my kind of stock lines on stages this summer is I think about half of the change that the pandemic will kick in how company structure has taken place. I think we've got another half to come. I think this prospective recession we're looking at, we'll see labor demand remain high, but that doesn't mean the same labor demand.
Exactly.
And I'm hoping that what we'll get is companies thinking seriously about their workforces, and of course that's a great opportunity for recruiters if you can get in there and at the same way add value. So if we're thinking about, okay, we're investing time in our candidates because they're lacking confidence, and the decisions they need to make are perhaps a bit more meaningful than they would make in a universally strong economy. The same is true on the client side, isn't it? Which is we need to get close to understanding where our clients are going to, not where they've been.
Yes, it's a very interesting conversation. I'm going to tackle it from 2 points of view. First of all, we talk about our industry in terms of clients and candidates. Of course, they are merged. And for us to get closer to our candidates, build trust so they'll take our advice, we actually have to have taken better job orders and have a better understanding of what the client's offering. Because it's going to be very hard for you to talk a candidate through the wobbles if you don't actually know exactly what the client is all about. I just quickly want to I'm going to answer your question, but I just have to tell you this anecdote. I was doing a training session in Australia, 40 recruiters in a room, all from the same company. And I said, do any of you interview candidates face to face? I wasn't expecting many yeses, but there was 100% no. So as a passing remark, I said, so you interview them on VC. And there was an awkward silence in the room, Neil. And I've been doing enough of this to know that it meant something. So I turned back and I said, you interview your candidates on Zoom, right? No one said anything. I said, I haven't been able to shut you up for half the day. Now you're quiet. How do you interview your candidates? Long and short of it is they interview the candidates for 10 minutes on the telephone. Now, these are accountants and engineers that they recruit. In 2019, they used to interview in a room, face to face, looking the person in the eye, asking the right questions. Now it's a 10-minute quick interview to check that what's on their resume is true. There's no questioning and understanding motivation, talking about counter offers, all the real skill of the job of a recruiter. And those same people said to me during the course of that day, our candidates' culture has changed. They're all ghosting us, etc. And I said, guys, that's why you don't have any rapport with them. So it's a classic example of how people have made the job more superficial and shallower. And on the client side, which you alluded to, it's true, Neil, that there's a lot of recruiters who've come into the industry since COVID. Maybe they're 2 years in. They've come into good companies that have a good brand and a good system of acquiring talent. Job orders are coming in the door. They've been good at making the match. I'm not belittling. They're good at the process, but they're very one-sided. They only have there are thousands of recruiters who've never done a client meeting in their lives. They've never done an outreach call in their lives. And my you talk about some of the phrases you use. My phrase at the moment is you need to flex your BD muscle. And the biggest advice I could give to, there's many pieces of advice, and next, when we do this on the 31st, we'll go into it, but is that we need to start to equip our recruiters with the skills to engage with clients better. There is a mindset among some recruiters that, if I've got candidates, clients will listen to me, which is true for now. It's going to change. So what I mean is make a list of your top 25 client contacts and go and see them. I know it sounds counterintuitive, but go and see them or set up a video call and get to know them better. Any clients in your database that you've ever had who you haven't spoken to 100 days, call them. Have an outreach call. We have got to understand that when the wheel turns, if you don't have a partnership mentality, a credibility, a relationship, those clients will dump you. They will not engage with you. And not only that, we've got to remember, and people, we have had a 10-year golden run apart from COVID in our industry. There's been a boom. People forget that. So that means that at least half the recruiters out there have never really been through a recession. They've been through COVID, which was not a recession economically produced. It was down, rapidly up, and supported by the government. So a lot of people are in jobs because the government in both your country and mine supported them. Yep. That won't happen in a recession. And so we need to equip people with relationship building skills, because when the market turns, every recruiter in town is going to suddenly have to get on the phone and do some business development. And they won't have the skills, and clients won't want to talk to them. So it's working to get closer to candidates, but it's also engaging on the client side in a much more deliberate and targeted way. And I know it's counterintuitive because a lot of recruiters I say this to, they say, but Greg, you don't get it, mate. They say, I'm short of candidates. And I'm like, I know, but just you wait. It's going to change. I don't know when, Neil, but it will change.
The two things in response to that I'm hearing from the most enlightened, the people I really respect in the REC membership, although I respect all our members. First thing is I'm hearing lots of firms talking about choosing their clients. So in an environment where you've got a lot of demand, who are the ones where you have that relationship, where you can actually say, hang on, no, not that. Why don't you do this? Because it's better for you. And you can have that conversation. We really understand what their pain points are now, not what they were in 2019 or 2020. And the other thing, and that call out to the interview we did with Tim Cook of Engage back at the conference, which is available on the website in the conference playbook for any members who want to catch up with it. Tim had a really great line, and it delivered it with classic Tim gruffness, which is, you don't shortchange your mates. And what he meant by that is if you've got a genuine strategic people planning relationship with your client, suddenly you're not as at risk of being commoditized. Whereas if you're in that position that you describe, Greg, of it's just about being quick, it's just about filling the seat quickly, it's just about being there, that is an immensely commoditizable service.
100%, and it will evaporate. And I don't know Tim Cook, but I completely agree with him. And there is a whole generation of recruiters who are billing a lot now who actually don't have the fully rounded skill set. And there's also experienced recruiters who have allowed that part of their portfolio of skills to weaken because the numbers are good. And we are not an industry famous, I think, for taking a long-term view. That's not our strength, but we must now do that. And the client, the comment you made about selecting your clients, the definition of a good client to me has changed dramatically. I mean, they've got to be a company, in my mind, that understands that accessing talent is a collaboration with your third-party recruiter. We've got to move fast. They've got to take our advice. I don't mean like a child takes advice from daddy, but I mean it's a collaborative communication. We are in it every day, and they need to take our advice on salaries and work from home and conditions. And they also need to be a place where candidates want to work. So we should really think hard about that, because I don't think the wheel's going to turn or the pendulum's going to swing so dramatically that there's a surplus of candidates in many areas, quickly. I don't think so. I might be wrong. So candidates are still going to be very selective, and the best clients are the ones who do all the things I described, but also have an employer brand where people want to work, because we get paid for acceptances, not for offers. I love saying that because it's so obvious, but we've got to work with clients where our candidates will accept.
Yeah.
And so we've got to be much smarter, much more thoughtful about where we spend our time.
A big part of that, of course, is clients realizing that just coming up with the song sheet, the company song, the EVP, the value proposition of what you think it is, isn't quite that. You've got to, it's that taking advice. You've got to employ the good. I'm an old school trade union negotiator by professional background, and it's all the employee relations stuff that I was taught when I was studying industrial relations back in 5 BC. It's that piece around, yeah, you've got what you can offer, but you actually have to understand what they need. And then the process is that bringing together of the two sides, and we can be the oil of the labor market in helping that to happen with good clients. But you need the relationship where a client will, where you understand the client's pain point and you've built up to a position where they'll listen to you, in the same way as you need to have that relationship with the candidate, where if you say to the candidate, look, you're probably pushing it a bit going at 60K for this, their thought is that's good advice from a professional, not this guy's trying to lowball me for their client.
Exactly. And the words I like to use is that if you've got a collaborative relationship with as that guy said, you don't shortchange your mates. A great recruiter gets him or herself into a position where you actually act as an advocate for your client. You are out there advocating. And that's one of the reasons why our industry won't be automated anytime soon, because a machine cannot advocate for a client. It's when I say to a candidate, look, I know you haven't heard of this company, but let me tell you the background. I know the CEO. I've placed 3 people there and they're thriving. Did you know that this is what they've achieved in their German head office? What, I'm making it up, but it's all got to be true, but you can advocate. Then the candidate who was not intending to go for an interview goes for an interview, loves it, gets the job. Only a recruiter can do that. And on the candidate side, we have to get ourselves into the position where we actually act, and very few recruiters do this, as an agent for the candidate in the marketplace, almost like a football agent or a theatrical agent, where those people get offered gigs, the top people, anywhere, but the agent represents them to secure the right opportunity for their career. That's the business. Now, to get to that position, you have to have transparency, authenticity, build credibility, trust. How are you going to do that, Neil, in a 10-minute phone call? It beggars belief that people are doing stuff like that. It's so transactional. It's so superficial.
Well, the most important thing here is we've talked about to be long-term and not be short-term. None of this takes away from the fact we've got to make our numbers every week, every month, every year. But it's just about creating space in our thinking about our business, or thinking, and you can think about your business as someone who works on a desk, as a head of a desk, or the head of a company, or the owner of the company. You can think about, but it's creating space every week for an hour or so. We're just saying, are we building towards the kind of client and candidate relationships that we know are going to be sustainable, which is what I'm really excited about August the 31st, where I think we're going to have a great lively session. We know there's over 100 people coming already. People can come and join us in London at rec.uk.com/events. What are you looking forward to for the day, Greg?
Well, there's a couple of things. First of all, it's a pleasure being back in London. It's a city that I absolutely love. The energy is here. 3 years since I've been here. Started badly when I went to go and watch West Ham play and they lost 2-0. So that wasn't good. But the rest of it's been fabulous. So I'm looking forward to catching up. There's a lot of people coming to this event who've been to my stuff before. I've had a lot of messages saying, see you there. I think it's getting close to 150 now, Neil. It's about 135. So it's climbing nicely. I'm looking forward to that, but I'm also looking forward to sharing what I've learned. And I don't mean over the 40 years necessarily, although I've been through 13 recessions, so there's a few lessons there. But it's also what I'm learning from all my current clients. And I've packaged together as a roadmap, which is going to do 3 things. One is help you maximize your profitability and success in this environment. Prepare yourself for an evolving environment so that you can still be successful and stay sustainable. Because, I'll tell you the third thing. And the third thing is building value in your company for a possible exit. Because at the end of the day, everyone is going to exit. So I'm going to talk about that. But just this one point. If a downturn comes, the saddest thing of all is that so many owners of recruitment companies will be forced, because 65% of every dollar, every pound spent in a recruitment company is spent on salaries. So if our revenues or gross profit drops by 50%, which it will in a severe downturn, they only got one lever to pull, which is salaries, which means they let people go. That's sad at a human level. But 12 to 18 months later, everyone will be back trying to recruit people again.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
It then becomes that crazy situation. So if we can build a company that is resilient enough, sustainable enough, that if a downturn comes, yeah, we might make less profit, the consultants might earn a bit less money, but we can trade through keeping most of our team on board, we will fly when the market picks up. Instead of going, oh, we went from 30 people to 10, now we've got to build that whole thing again, which took us 5 years to do it again. And that is what most recruitment companies will do. That is what I'm going to talk about preventing, because it'll put companies miles ahead if they can do that.
We're absolutely on the same page there. We did a lot of work on recruitment pay and team engagement early in the year. A real message from the REC was, the sun is shining in the first half of 2022, but we all think, something's coming. We don't know when it's coming, but something's coming. Don't let your business get away from you in the good times, because then you're in a tougher situation when the weather changes. I think many firms have been a bit careful over the last few months. Now's the time to be thinking about what the long-term strategy is. Really looking forward to our session on August 31st, Greg. Thanks for doing this today. Looking forward to seeing you, both for lunch beforehand and then at the session on the 31st. It's going to be a really great, lively session. And just to finish, fantastic to get 150 recruiters in a room together after 2-3 years where we haven't done much of that. So I'm really excited for the day.
Yeah, look, me too. And I appreciate and I thank both the REC and JobAdder who's sponsoring it for helping this come together. I have done 1 or 2 events in Australia post-COVID, and there's a lot of energy in the room. There's a lot of excitement. People are happy to see each other, to be actually the truth. There's going to be questions and banter, and I hope a few laughs, but also the serious business of a plan to navigate through a tricky time. I haven't got all the answers, but I've got a few ideas. So I'm looking forward to it. And I'm looking forward to that lunch. It's very difficult to get you to buy a lunch, so I'm very proud of myself.
Well, I like to conform to my national stereotype.
We're not going down that road. I'm not making any Scottish jokes.
Well, I look forward to the day. Everyone, thanks for joining us on this video podcast.